Hello, everyone. I always love, this is the favorite part of my day, is being able to meet and interview folks from all over the world, really, that are making such an impact in the world of caring for the folks that we care about. So I am so excited to have this conversation with you, Neal. And I know
Thanks,
that
Laura.
our listeners are too. Neal and I were just chatting a little bit before I hit record, and oh my gosh, this is going to be a fun conversation about everything from technology and AI to finding care in your local environment. And yeah, so I want to give you just a brief introduction here, and then we'll just jump in together and start this conversation. So, Neal Shah is America's Chief Elder Officer. I like that. He's a
Thanks.
CEO and co-founder of CareYaya. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
CareYaya. Sure.
CareYaya. It's a tech-enabled elder care marketplace that's growing rapidly across the country, connecting over 20,000 college students aspiring to healthcare careers to be in-home caregivers of older adults with dementia. He founded CareYaya after his own personal caregiving journey and is a passionate advocate for tech innovation to relieve the strain on family caregivers. Thank you, Neal. So I have to just share with everyone and share with you. I was just telling a friend of mine how I really want to find somebody. I want to do an interview on tech and excuse me, tech and AI and what's out there and what's the future of this. And you and I had booked to talk about the caregiving and connecting college students. I'm so
Yeah.
interested in. And when I realized that you do both, like you have
Yeah.
this
Thanks.
great, yeah. So let's start, if you don't mind. You can tell
Sure.
I'm very excited about this already. Um,
Awesome.
Tell us, you mentioned that you had a personal caregiving journey, and I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Let's just set the stage for us on what happened there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Happy to give you kind of like a little bit of background. And also, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's actually very timely because this is the first thing I'm doing, in terms of like any interview or anything. But it's been a big week for us where we just got selected by LinkedIn as one of the top 50 startups in America. And we're the only care related anything. It's all these like technology B2B sales companies, and we're the only care tech company. So it's, yeah, pretty cool. So it's like,
Congratulations! Oh my
thank
gosh,
you. Thank you. It's
the
like
world
really
needs
cool
you.
external validation of our work, that we've been doing for years. So good, thanks for having me on. So good luck. Um, so yeah, yeah, happy to give you an overview. Like I'll give you a brief background on my personal journey. But I have kind of like a non-traditional background for the care industry. But kind of like quick recap. I grew up in North Carolina. Actually, my family are immigrants from India, so I was a child when I moved here. And when I was younger, I was like a very introverted person, like math whiz. Kind of just like good at numbers. And I went to school at University of Pennsylvania, and I pursued a career in finance. So out of college, I moved to New York City, and I was doing investment banking. Very quickly went into private equity and hedge funds. And by my late 20s, I'd become a partner at a multi-billion dollar fund where I was running a portfolio of investments, across healthcare, technology, other. And I was good at like analyzing opportunities and figuring out which companies were going to like do well and which ones weren't. And then by my early 30s, I generated a lot of returns for those investors. So one of those investors backed me to start my own fund. So I started that fund when I was 31 with 10 million of one investor's capital. And then by 35, I'd grown it to 250 million. I had a university endowments and pension funds, so I was kind of like, that was my track until I became a caregiver. I found myself going through a secondhand care journey, then a firsthand care journey, first for my grandfather, through dementia, kidney failure, cancer, and then end of life care, where, really my mother did the majority of the care, but,
How
I'm
old
viewed
were
as the
you?
person.
How old
At
were
that time,
you?
I was early 30s.
Okay.
And, at that time, I'm viewed as a person in the family that everybody would turn to. I'm a very researchy type of person. So it'd be like, okay, I'm navigating, finding options, blah, blah. But, I saw the burden it took because really we couldn't find good quality, reliable help that was consistent. So like, my mom felt like, okay, I'm going to leave my career to do it. And then what's supposed to be a few months turns into years. And then after that, she never went back to her career. Plus the psychological and emotional toll, it took. So that was my first foray into caregiving and care navigation and kind of learning about the care industry. And I just, at that point, I became kind of obsessed with it while I was still running my fund. And I was like, okay, there's got to be some way to invest here. There's got to be some people doing cool things, blah, blah. Sad to say there weren't, so I spent a lot of time researching, and I was like, the entire industry was like these kind of traditional elder care agencies running like a 1980s, 1990s type model, which I'll get into later, but, not really serving families well, not really serving caregivers well, even the paid caregivers, we're not having a good time. So I was like, this industry is really inefficient and broken. And it's a surprise to me because I think as sometimes, an immigrant to the US, you're like, the American healthcare system is like amazing. It's like the groundbreaking therapeutics are being developed here, like cutting edge treatments, surgical procedures, et cetera. But like, there's so much of care that is home or social care. And hate to say, like the social care system here is like, I think non-existent, in terms of it's run by these private corporations that don't care at all about the impact. And families are kind of on their own, like care burden is externalized onto all these individuals and families taking care of their loved ones. And when you go through these experiences, like 95+% of what's happening is not through the hospital. It's what's happening at home in many of these diagnoses. So long story short, that was my first foray. Then at 35, at the peak of my fund, after I'd like grown it and worked, really hard, I'm just like a very hard worker and very focused on that. My wife became severely ill. And then I became a primary caregiver with years of cancer treatment, multiple hospitalizations. At one point was in a medical coma, failed therapies, surgeries, et cetera. And it took an enormous toll, in terms of just the, I was in a career which, is very demanding, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I was running an organization where there were a handful of people, but really everybody was there because of me. And I kept taking sabbaticals for my work to manage my wife's care. And ultimately, I kind of made a difficult decision of just like winding down my fund and becoming a full-time caregiver because I thought that would have an impact on the outcome. And, pleased to say, knock on wood, it did. Finally, she had a successful outcome and has now been in remission for a few years. But I think that it was like due to heavy involvement. Yeah, really seriously, like thank God. And at that point, I became like really obsessed with caregiving. And I saw that that was a firsthand impact of like, okay, this is taking a big impact on me. I've spent so much time through the hospital system, through observing other people, through caregiver support groups, seeing what other people are going through. And I was just like, wow, this is like impacting way more people than I thought. All these people are burning out of their careers. All these people have to defer their own dreams. Like the system that exists here is like not serving anyone. So yeah, I became kind of obsessed with it. And I also thought at that point, it was like maybe even a personal wake up call for me, where I was like, okay, I have this skill set and brain, but I've been kind of just squandering it on like things that don't matter, which I'm not knocking anyone, but like finance, it's like whatever, it's an industry. But here is something that is a problem worth solving that does matter, that I've experienced myself, and I can direct my energy to. I'm like a very obsessive person. So, okay, I can become obsessed over this problem and try to solve something. And the underlying impact would be you could improve the lives of like tens of millions of people who are going through this. So yeah, that was kind of my own journey. So that after my wife's treatment, I was in my late 30s, and then I started CareYaya. It was like I had a bunch of ideas on like what I've observed through my own care journeys of like where there are interesting opportunities, where people have found kind of innovative solutions that could be scaled up. Also where there were just gaps where no one was trying to build a solution. So yeah, that was kind of like really the inspiration of like, okay, how can you build something that would serve a lot of people in doing things in ways that aren't being done at the moment. So yeah.
Wow. And that's incredible. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have this urge to want to climb into your brain and
Sure.
figure out,
Yeah.
okay, so as somebody who has, worked in this industry and I live, this is my life.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, so start to paint the picture for us on
Yeah.
what direction did you decide to go? Like how did you narrow down of all the things? I mean, what I hear you saying is this giant pain point that so many people are experiencing of
Yeah.
feeling lost and alone in navigating, in making decisions, in grieving and not knowing what to do and not getting the
Yeah.
like all like we know this. And so
Yeah.
what did you do with that? Like where did your mind go with what's next?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. I spent a lot of time thinking about where the different gaps were, and then started thinking rank ordering of like, where is there kind of like the biggest challenge or burden you could solve for a bunch of people. And to me, at least from my own lived experience, a couple times, and then observing what a lot of families were going through, the biggest challenge where I thought there wasn't a lot of innovation was like a lot of times the family caregiver just needs a break or respite, or needs someone around because, you know, in my case, like obviously you're there, so you just need somebody to help so that you can go do something else, whether it's your job or have time to yourself. But in many other cases where you're not there, then it's even more of like, oh, I need somebody to keep an eye on my loved one because I can't keep driving there and flying there. So I just thought that the kind of like having a physical caregiver that is reliable, quality, affordable, you know, et cetera, and that doesn't make you feel guilty. I think that is critical because like when the quality is blah, you feel guilty that I'm not living there or I'm going to my job or I'm whatever. And I thought that was probably the aggregate biggest pain point. You know, I think there are a lot of other things that could be improved about the care journey, but I think the fact that there isn't like a good caregiver system in the country,
Yeah,
and it's like both this like, you know, it's like a formal market run by these elder care franchise companies, and then a massive gray market, which like the gray market even dwarfs the formal market. So it's like a $500+ billion market, which is just like in 2024, like why aren't there tech enabled solutions? You know, kind of like, okay, when, you know, I was living in New York City in my 20s, and it's like, why did I have to go outside and hold my hand up to get a cab? Like, gee, wow, Uber. You know, it's like now it's so obvious, but like, can you imagine like within our own lifetime, you had to stand outside and just wait and hope that, you know, at 10 o'clock at night when I'm going home from the office, will there be a cab that passes who has an availability? You know, it's kind of like that, or, you know, delivering
what a
food, right?
great
You had to
example.
call up all these places, you know,
What
to
a
get food.
great example. I mean, this is I mean, I just want to call out the what you're saying, which is so true, is people, even when people get to the point where they recognize, okay, in order for my loved one to receive the best care, I need to take care of myself. You know, that's a huge
Mm-hmm.
mission of what this whole podcast is about, is
Yeah.
taking care of yourself as a caregiver. And so even when you come to that realization
Yeah.
and recognize I need a break,
Yep.
like you said, the guilt that people feel on not being able to find quality, and quality exists, it's out
Mm-hmm.
there, but like you said, it's a crapshoot. It's like you don't know who you're going to get or where to go to get that person, or is it a person, what does it look like I'm so interested. So okay, continue your journey here.
Sure. Okay. So with that as a focus of like, okay, let's start thinking, how can you do innovation to help people get caregivers? Kind of the most obvious thing and the best kept secret, which you know, I think like we've talked about, is that there is a hidden workforce of great caregivers that many families know exist, but hasn't been like kind of brought to the proper market, which is healthcare students. You know, initially, a lot of families use nursing students. They found pre-med students, people who are going to physical therapy, occupational therapy. You know, there are people out in the world who have very caring qualities and who want to go into clinical careers, for whom a temporary path in life, whether it lasts 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, will be to become a caregiver, who will do it, yes, for income, but who really will do it out of interest, experience, learning, and potential graduate
Curiosity.
school applications and blah, blah. Exactly.
Yeah, the
Curiosity, like
passion for that.
all of these other things, which will then turn back into making them wonderful caregivers.
Yeah.
And they will be on a different track in terms of like, these will be our future doctors and nurses of tomorrow. So to have your, you know, future, you know, surgeon be a caregiver is like an amazing, that's like, talk about a family not feeling guilty. Most family caregivers would be like, wow, I'm putting somebody that has even more skills than myself and more interest in this field than myself to do it, you know, so I can go to my job. So I'm not feeling guilty. I'm feeling proud. So I had observed that through my own care journey, as well as observed a lot of families, caregiver support groups, people I talked to that were like, people knew this awesome secret, but there were challenges. And the challenges were there was no way to find them. You had to kind of post up flyers. You had to go to a local university near you. You had to figure out, okay, well, people call me. How do I find them? How do I vet them? How do I schedule them? So a lot of people were managing, but I mean, the family caregivers that were managing this were like, it was like straight up job in managing that. You're almost running your own little HR or recruiting firm, to try to do that. And of course, students like, leave, they have schedule changes, they graduate, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So I found, okay, that exists. Then I found, okay, technology innovation in this industry is close to zero, in terms of like all these traditional like care companies are just running local staffing agencies, minimal tech. And then when we're doing kind of like pilot surveys, so we're in our area, we're in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. So it's like right between Duke and UNC Chapel Hill. So two great universities, within, 15 minutes of each other, and, surveyed a bunch of students, and they were like, oh, I'm a nursing student at UNC. Oh, I'm a pre-med student at Duke. Most of them, if they apply to an elder care job, they would get rejected. Like 3.9 GPA senior at Duke, pre-med, rejected from all the jobs because the company's like, no, I only want full-time workers, or I want at least 30 hours a week workers. And the student's like, well, I'm in school, so I'm happy to do it, but I can't do it all the time. So the care companies are like, no, I'm not set up for that. So it was very clear that a gig economy kind of like solution, like whether it's like Uber, DoorDash, however you want to draw the analogy, a tech-enabled gig economy solution could unlock this massive workforce of, in my opinion, some of the best caregivers in America that no one wants. And you could kind of like unlock and bring them into all these homes, and all these families that had discovered that secret would no longer have to rely on themselves and go through all the grunt work of finding, recruiting, vetting, scheduling, booking, managing turnover, all that like something could do it for you. So that was kind of like the initial concept of like literally Uberize, this industry. And, there's pros and cons to Uber, but whatever the analogy is, like, create a tech-enabled platform solution where this workforce could be available, where all the hard work, the vetting, background checking, interviewing, scheduling could all be done for you. And then you as a family caregiver could simply book and access. And then on the other end, for the student side, by bringing in the formal market, they would have a lot of structured opportunity where it's not like, oh, I'm just seeing some random flyer in school and then calling and arranging something. But okay, I have this platform that's then going around vetting families, we background check families, we do all that other stuff too, so that it's like a high trust online marketplace of both sides. So yeah, that was kind of like the opportunity that we thought, okay, this is a huge opportunity and no one's doing it, and seems to be a no-brainer.
I can see like on this, on some level, this is reinventing the whole concept of in-home care. I mean,
Yeah,
the way that you describe this, and I'm imagining the med students' exposure in the homes, that typically, and I know I'm speaking generally here, but typically you're attracting people who are invested, curious, people who are interested in the latest research, people who are innovative, people that are taking that information and applying it in all these different ways. Like, man, and then to your point that you made earlier, so one of the things I do here in my community is I teach doctors that at our local hospital, when they're in their last year, I teach them a little bit about dementia and
nice.
aging and
Awesome.
caregiver, the plight of the caregiver, and they get like a little bit of time, to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
And unless they have experienced something in their own personal life, they're really clueless to the experience. And so part of my work, as you can imagine, is been over the years hearing caregivers, families tell me one of the biggest pain points that they experience is that the medical providers do not understand what it's like for them. And whether they are caring, whether they're a power of attorney or a family member that doesn't even have that medical healthcare directive, trying to communicate with doctors and trying to do what's best for their loved ones, and then coming up against roadblocks. To your point, I am so excited to think about like you said, the future of our providers, the future of those ER doctors,
Yes.
those, family practice doctors, the nurses that have started out as caregivers, or can at least
Mhm.
understand what it's like to be in the community outside of a medical model system, in the community, in people's homes, seeing the struggle, the real struggle. Um, this is, I mean,
100%.
I'm getting
Yeah.
chills, Neal.
Yeah, thank you. No, 100%. I would echo everything you said. Like many of these young individuals, if you think about the alternative, they could volunteer at a hospital, or sometimes they will go work at a hospital if they want to go pursue all these certifications. But the work will involve fairly clinical, and there I use the word clinical. I mean, it has multiple connotations, but in that sense, sometimes clinical has a connotation of impersonal, robotic. And I think when you see a college student volunteering or working as a CNA at a hospital, the work is 5 to 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here, clinical in terms of I do specific things for people. I don't really get to know them. I don't get to know them on ongoing because they're here one day, gone the next. They might even be gone a few hours later. So you don't truly learn how to develop empathy, bedside manner, truly understand the full picture of not
Yes,
just what the
the whole
person is going through,
system.
what the family is going
That we're
through.
all part of a community. We're all part of a,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And you even see them as a patient at a hospital
Mhm.
rather than a 82-year-old lady living in her home with dementia who all of a sudden talks about this whole other life she had, and her day to day, isn't all just the disease and not defining her, but there's other things going on. And I feel like that in a home ongoing relationship context, even if it's one day a week, 2 days a week, but you spend time with someone, the relationship and your exposure is dramatically different. Then you could spend time with 1,000 people at a hospital on these 15-minute shifts, and you'd
Oh,
never kind of like humanize what's going on. If anything, in
absolutely.
the hospital, you start, becoming almost robotic, where
It's
it's just
true.
like, oh, these
And
are
not
just,
just the hospital,
yeah,
it's whether that's skilled nursing facilities, or it's
hmm,
even our, and I say this with all respect, it's even our
yeah,
case managers with the state who are,
yeah, agreed,
folks on Medicaid,
yeah,
like when they are not taught, a lot of people go into that line of work because they care.
yeah,
By the time they're done, by the time they've been
hmm,
educated and they're kind of spit out the other end, they have learned to turn off that empathy
yeah,
piece.
yeah,
And so what I'm seeing here is just the opportunity that it's not just starting out and having the early experience of
yeah,
providing care and seeing people more, to their humanity.
yeah,
It's also it's the end product as well. When we can
yeah,
um, somehow influence a healthcare system into honoring that
yeah,
the whole family, the whole person, the whole
agreed,
experience. Yeah.
totally agree.
Oh my gosh. So you also mentioned something I just want to call out too. All
Sure.
right, I'm getting over this cold. So
Yeah, no worries. Me too. Me
um,
too.
the you mentioned the the struggle, or the hardship of finding and hiring
Hmm.
private care. And there are several different ways that people typically do that. There are the big franchise home care companies. There's the local nonprofit home care agencies. There are home care cooperatives that are now
Hmm.
popping up here and there. Then there's this whole industry you talk about of independent providers that the range and scope is so vast. Um, so that in and of itself, finding that a quality person that fits your family's values and can work
Yeah,
with you is one thing. But this whole other piece, and you touched on it for just a second, is this piece of people I don't think realize, especially those people that are like, okay, I'm at the point, I'm going to accept, I need help. Um, it's going to help me, it's going to help my loved one. They don't realize how much work it takes to then manage hiring.
hmm,
It's like adding another job. It can be. I don't want to,
yeah,
I'm generalizing, but it's a whole nother set of challenges and oversight, and a whole other area that people often aren't experienced in. And some people just choose to not go there because it's just another layer that they can't handle, or they go there without realizing the challenge that they're about to step into. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more. Again, you touched on it just a little bit. You talk about the vetting both sides and the clarity and of the roles and tasks, and how are you actually making life easier for caregivers?
Yeah, great question, Laura. And I think, you phrased it well, where even if people make the decision, if I'm going to seek care support, they very soon find I now have taken a second job of care manager, coordinator, hirer, HR of a company. And I think that, and there I would say, let's say like the few paths people can go down, but if you want to just take two paths of care agency path and then finding private caregivers on your own path, right? The care agency path, it's not as much do it for me as you'd expect. It is do it for me in the sense that you pay someone, you sign a contract, they then have vetted and reliable people that will come help you, and then they match them and schedule them, and then they come and help you. But nonetheless, there's still a lot of challenges. One, in the traditional, and so I'll speak in North Carolina, but I think in your area and in many areas, the traditional care agency path is anywhere from $35 to $45 an hour. Let's say nationwide average is kind of averaging high 30s. In some of these big cities is averaging like 42, 45. So let's say $40 an hour as average baseline. You spend $40 an hour, and what do you get? They pay the care worker less than half. So depending on what city you're in, it's like barely minimum or subsistence wage, right? In our area in North Carolina, the care agencies typically charge $35 an hour, and the average caregiver pay in the state is $11.50 an hour, right? Wow. So like it's like literally the caregivers are like struggling, and then so what happens? So you pay that money. And because of the way the care agency model works, right, where they're keeping most of the money for themselves, no one wants to do that work. So there are some good-hearted people, but they'll burn out and go take a job at McDonald's or Walmart because it pays way better.
And this is a huge part of the healthcare crisis, by the way. I serve on a board here in Washington State for developing the healthcare industry, and this is a crisis across the country. Is finding and maintaining healthcare workers at the level of caregiver, because of the wages. So
and so no, thanks. And you know what's funny is that these care companies are saying, oh, complaining caregiver shortage. I'm like, how about business model change? Like if you charge $40 an hour, in our case, $35 an hour in this North Carolina area, and you pay them $11.50, no wonder there's a caregiver shortage. Like no one wants to do that. How about you? It's like, and this is where I was thinking, like, if you just think about it purely from a logical perspective, the care company is compared to who's adding the value. The care worker is doing 99% of the hard work, going to somebody's house, helping them around, doing difficult things, right? Spending hours and hours of their time. The care company, yes, they're doing some value. I would call it 1% of the value, right? Like whether CareYaya or anyone else, right? Of like vetting, background checking, scheduling, staffing, and all that. So if you're adding 1% of the value and the person who's doing the care on the ground is adding 99% of the value, how the heck does it make sense that economic distribution should be care worker gets 30 to 40%, care company takes the remaining 60%, blows it on advertising, marketing, royalties to national franchisor, owner salary, whatever else money is being wasted on. So there's something illogical about that of like value delivered compared to value captured. And in my opinion, the private for-profit like care agency industry is capturing an egregiously excess value compared to what the value they're adding. And I'll give you other examples. So this is why it kind of falls back on the family caregiver, is that the family caregiver thinks, okay, fine, I'm just going to pay an arm and a leg, then this company will do it all for me. What do they get? One, they get low quality care because these companies are paying the caregivers nothing. Two, because they're paying the caregivers nothing, many of these are middle-aged women who oftentimes have to take second and third jobs to make ends meet, and they might even be single mothers. Okay, well, what do you know? They didn't show up to the care shift. Who could really blame them? Maybe they got more money working at Food Lion that shift or elsewhere. So you have a ridiculous reliability issue across the industry. From a lot of the families I talked to, even when I was researching, on average, 15% of the shifts are multiple hours late or no show, no call. So family caregiver is basically like, I'm paying top dollar, I'm buying like Mercedes type product, but I still might have to call out sick for my job once a week because the person didn't show up. Or if the person does show up, I've experienced this, sometimes they're just unengaged, sometimes they're tired, goofing off on their phone when you get home from work.
Because it's a
Yeah,
new person
exactly.
showing up. Yeah.
Exactly. So massive turnover industry. And I think it's because of, effectively like labor exploitation, hate to say it, but it's like when so much of the share of money is kept by the company and not the individual when they're bearing the most of the work share. So I think that experience for me, I've been a customer of it, sucked. And that's only for people who can afford it. Most families can't. So then you have the 80% of families who are like, well, I can afford something, but I can't afford these companies, who are just going on their own in this black market, gray market of finding people on their own. There you have an even further challenge of, okay, finding all these people, vetting them, managing scheduling. What if the person doesn't show? How do you find the next one? Blah, blah. Then how do you do you just leave books of instructions? How do they know what they want to do? So in both of these markets, I perceive the care experience from having used both of them is not that great. What we have done through tech innovation and through workforce innovation is one, we have found now we're north of 20,000 college students across the country. We're at over 30 different universities. Yeah, we started in our backyard and it's like scaled, it's skyrocketed everywhere. So we're all over obviously all over North Carolina, like Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, a bunch of other schools, but we're also all over San Francisco, like Berkeley, Stanford, San Francisco State. We are expanding to Seattle. So we're like UW, University of Washington. We are all over New York, like Columbia, NYU, Fordham, some of the other schools. Boston is one of our biggest markets. We have like 7 different universities there, Harvard, Tufts, Northeastern. So we have like now 20,000 plus college students at all these places, vetted, background checked, available, scheduled, on demand. So one, we have made the experience a lot easier for you. Two, the reliability is through the roof. Like the students are profusely apologetic if they're 5 minutes late. Like they're calling and texting you like crazy. No shows is unheard of, in terms of like they would be deactivated from our platform if that happened. And then worst case is they woke up sick and then out of courtesy, they tell people like, hey, I can't make it. I really have a sore throat. I don't want to get your mom or dad sick. So I think that part of it is, and I can talk to that in terms of like the model is our model is highly affordable. So we actually almost too affordable in the sense of we charge nothing. So we are running a tech platform that we are just eating all the costs, and that poses a challenge of scalability and sustainability. But for now, we're just like, okay, winging it. And all the money goes to the caregiver. So in most markets, like let's say Boston, where prevailing elder care rate is $45 an hour through any care company, CareYaya is offering Harvard, Tufts, Northeastern students at 20 to 25 bucks an hour, depending on length of session, and student gets the whole money. In places like San Francisco, same thing, 20 to 25 bucks an hour. Seattle and some higher cost markets, it might be 22 starting, 22 to 25. But students love it. Families love it because it's 30 to 50% more affordable. And because you're delivering it all through a tech platform, your incremental costs are not very high. So we are just kind of funding the organization through grants and like angel investors for now, but a very low budget operation can run a national kind of like high quality, massive workforce with high reliability, like 98% plus on-time percentages, like literally unbelievable quality. Tens of thousands of care sessions have happened. Every session is rated mutually by the family and the student. We're averaging 4.87 out of 5 stars rating. Like sky high Google reviews, like traditional care industry, Google reviews on average like 3.3 out of 5. Most people don't love the experience. So it's like, it's literally a higher quality experience at a lower price, delivered more conveniently for the busy, stressed out family caregiver, where you manage everything, booking, scheduling, all through tech. Instructions can be uploaded through tech, dynamically updated, and then that's delivered to everyone. So I think just kind of like ongoing management, notes are delivered of like what happened in the care session. So yeah, it's like all around, it just like takes a lot of the pain points of your manual experience, whether through a care agency or through a informal kind of like gray market. And it just like streamlines it all into like as convenient of experience as, I'm sitting at my desk, I open my phone and call an Uber, and I go downstairs 3 minutes later when it's here. It's like that. Yeah.
I have a quick question, and I do want to shift gears a little bit because
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit more
Sure.
about tech and AI and your visions.
Mhm.
The quick question, we'll see how quick it is.
Okay.
Is my mind is going towards certified nursing assistant versus home care aide qualification.
Sure.
Like, what is there a certification? I know that technically, at least in Washington State, technically, in order to hire an independent provider, they don't have to be certified or trained in anything. And when you're working with a home care company, then they have qualifiers for registration or certification? I'm just curious what your
Yeah.
company is there.
Yeah, sure. So I would say ours is no certifications required. Many of the students have them, CNA or EMT, but we don't require them. We run it like care.com, not like a home care agency. So it's a caregiver, it's an online caregiver registry, but we don't rep it as an agency. And critically, we guide that it's companion level care only. They're not supposed to be doing insulin injections and kind of like higher acuity needs. But we did a lot of research with AARP, which, by the way, AARP is a big supporter and backer of ours. They chose us to be part of the Age Tech Collaborative, and I was actually earlier this week. I was at the AARP conference in DC, and when the LinkedIn news came out, like literally they announced it to the whole conference that are like one of our companies is now recognized as like top 50 startups in America, and they were like, everybody at AARP was so proud because they've been making a big push in caregiving. Yeah, thank you, thank you. It was like really fun. So they did a lot of research with us, and their research suggested that of older adults above 65 who need help with home care, 61% of them can be served by companion level care. So yes, we cannot address the other 39%, which is really unfortunate. I hope that as we grow, we can figure that out. But that 61% that has companion care needs, we can dominate that, because why should someone pay $40 an hour for companion care and then have the care worker not make anything?
Absolutely.
These students are doing a great job of that. So that's,
and predominantly those individuals that are remaining at home, that are able to remain at home, the family caregivers are doing a fantastic job, and they're burning out. So this is just addressing the solution of burnout and support for family caregivers, and providing, I mean, I'm imagining the quality of care in just the attentiveness alone that is coming with these companions. Okay, shifting gears, if you don't mind, I want to do just a little touch on, you talk about health technologies and being in the tech and AI and IT kind of world. Just give us a little sample or taste of maybe other ideas you have, or the things you're most excited about for the future of utilizing tech in the world of aging.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the big opportunities we realized as we're scaling this is that we have a couple of different things happening. One is this is a tens of thousands of Gen Z smart college students population going into the homes of older adults around the country. These are highly ambitious, digitally native young people who know how to use smartphones, who know how to use other technology that they can then deploy into the home setting. So we kind of feel like, okay, this could be an awesome test bed. And we were approached by the National Institutes of Health about this, where they're like, you realize you guys are running a massive research lab that can be operationalized to do technology innovations for older adults, because a lot of people are just pure tech doing it, but they don't have the channel to kind of get it and test it in homes. So we do. So we started kind of like really pivoting and thinking, so that's happening at the same time as AI is now being massively democratized, as the cost is getting cheaper and ability to build on top of it is getting easier and easier. So we rapidly started building AI projects. So our first project was caregiver training. So we're like, okay, we have all these student caregivers watch dementia training videos. UCLA Alzheimer's and Dementia Center has made available to us a bunch of those. But we're like, okay, next level. So we proposed a project to Johns Hopkins and National Institutes of Health, which had this big funding for AI. And we won this grant. And then we started developing it. And now it's already out in the field. And it's basically AI-powered caregiver training. We call it Duolingo for caregivers, which is, that language learning app that a lot of Gen Z people use to like quickly learn Spanish or whatever language. We're like, the key is using AI to personalize, figure out what you already know, figure out who you're going to take care of, and then deliver you bite-sized training modules so you can gradually get badges and build your confidence level. It really reduces the intimidation, right? From a student to like, oh, I got to go through 80 hours of watching these DVDs or going to this class, to no, I'm getting 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute sessions here. I'm getting quick quizzes. I'm learning. I'm upskilling, as I need, and I'm building my confidence.
And it's actually personal. I can see with the AI, it can be personalized to the individual that they're going to see too. It's not just not general. Oh my.
Exactly. And it can be used real time of like, while you're there and hey, this is happening. What should I do? It's kind of like having a care coach in your pocket, so to speak, which will tell you, okay, do this and this and try this. So that launched. So that was like our first big foray, and it's like awesome. There's like so much like encouragement from healthcare systems and NIH on this of like, okay, projects like this that can expand access. So we kind of launched that. Then there's other projects that we just kind of built in-house. Like here's another one. there's generative AI now for imagery, right? So we observed a lot of people we're helping have Parkinson's. So it's not just dementia, right? But there's like a decent, sizable minority of people who are getting care for mom or dad with Parkinson's.
Yeah,
so we observed, okay, a lot of people, some of them had told us, oh, I used to like to art, look at art, draw art, try to create art. Now I have tremors, but I want to try. And we saw, okay, well, now generative AI is advancing rapidly. So this is now, by the way, this project is like literally now a year old. It's like kind of crazy. This is like one of our older projects, but we have had in the field, and I'm happy to send you the link if anyone wants to use it. It's like freely available. All our innovations are like, we get them on grants and we just let them, out there in the world for free so people can use them. But we have this AI art tool that students will take an iPad to help people with Parkinson's, also usable for people with dementia, anyone. So they can say, okay, the student would type in, okay, I want to draw golden retriever because that's what the person reminisces about their dog that died 15 years ago. So it'll be a golden retriever. Then person would start drawing on it. And of course, people with tremors, like their drawing wouldn't be that great, but it would draw. And then we use generative fill to like fill in the picture and then make it look really good. And then the person's like, oh, wow, this is nice. I drew that. And then you can kind of play around and draw a bunch of other things. So it's like, this is like almost like, took us like a few weeks to code that. It wasn't even that hard. But social impact, massive. We started deploying virtual reality as an option where like VR goggles are becoming cheaper and cheaper. A lot of the older adult population can no longer travel. They may never go to Paris again. They're certainly not going to go on an African safari, etc. But we can bring that to them. So we found a bunch of content and then we personalize the content based on what they want to see. And then we launched those. So we've been doing a lot of those projects in the in-home setting, as well as in like dementia day centers. Like in our area, a lot of churches run day programs for people with dementia. So we do that all the time. And it's just like, so feel good. Students love doing it. Older adults love doing it. The person who runs a dementia center at United Methodist Church in our area said he's been running it for 26 years. And like recently we did an hour session there and he was like, this is the most fun I've seen anyone here have in the entire time I've been doing this. And I was like, yeah, because it's like fully immersive and they got to escape and go to all kinds of things.
Oh
so that's been an impact. Yeah. And then like, I'll pause, but I mean, if you want me to keep going, I have other, there's even cooler. Okay.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah. I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
So if you don't mind sharing a couple more and
sure.
then I'd love to, you mentioned links and stuff. I'll make sure, I just want to let our listeners know, I'll make sure I get those links from you and I'll include it in our show notes and everything too. But
sure. Here's a couple other projects. So we're currently actively working with Johns Hopkins researchers on AI powered eye tracking. So cognitive decline screening is a massive problem right now in society where a lot of people can't access expensive neurologists and MRI and PET scans. But you can now literally use your smartphone, and now a lot of smartphones have like infrared eye trackers, and by observing micro oscillations of your pupils, like for example, right now, if I were to look on the screen and look from bottom left to top right, my pupils would be oscillating like this. Right. But somebody with dementia, early stage, the pupil might oscillate up here and then don't go down there and then just go up here again, might go like that. And then somebody with more advanced dementia, it might go up here and then tracking the dot, it might just kind of skip and then end up here and then end up here. Right. So and then I'm exaggerating, for just like the visual, but small changes in how the pupils oscillate when they're following a line can be used to diagnose. And cognitive decline and then stage. So we're working on an AI project for that. There's actually the most exciting thing, which I ran out of time, is neurotech. So now you can actually read brain activity for $300-400 headsets in your home. So we actually have another project that we've been working on directly with NIH, which is to buy these devices out of a Canadian research lab that are available for $300-400. And students go into older adults' homes, put them on their head, and it's non-invasive, but it can read electrical activity in the brain and tell you where somebody's off, in terms of like, okay, and if you do that once a week, you can kind of develop a pattern of like, if somebody has dementia, suddenly in these few weeks, it's getting worse, go get it checked out. So It's been very helpful from a preventative setting where like a lot of times falls and things happen because people's cognition suddenly declines because these are progressive neurological diseases. So that's been cool.
So you're able to capture the baseline, you're able to capture, what I'm thinking from a behavioral standpoint is looking at when someone's not getting enough sleep or they're not getting hydration
Hmm.
or nutrition, you're going to see these. So you're able to catch
Yeah,
this stuff. I mean,
exactly. And then,
along with the bigger changes happening with the
yeah,
disease process. Wow.
exactly. And then the biggest home run on that is twofold. There's two therapeutic things which we're both actively working on. One is um, observing and personalizing music to calm people who are agitated. And we've launched that with UCSF, their hospital. In their ER, they're having a problem where like a lot of people with dementia are showing up agitated. So by simply putting this on and observing the brain's response to music, you can very quickly personalize the music intervention to calm people. And then the second home run project, this is a little bit of a moonshot, but we're having some decent success in this, is for people with aphasia who can no longer communicate, but they still have thoughts. If you kind of think about the process of aphasia, it's the connections are severed between different parts of the brain. So they're thinking they just can't get it out. We're now building what's called brain-computer interface, but non-invasive, where through reading electrical signals, you're able to guess what the person's thinking about. So for now, it's like you're able to guess orange or you're able to guess lemon and things like that, and then put those on a computer screen with really the hope of building a very simple, basic BCI of like, okay, I want to go to the bathroom versus I need food versus give me a glass of water. So if you can kind of read that through a non-invasive device to then communicate intent, that could be a game changer for a lot of people whose thoughts are locked in their mind. So that's like, yeah, it's like between AI and neurotech, stuff is advancing like crazy, and you can,
I had no idea when I asked that question what I was.
Yeah.
I can imagine for you, Neal, you are like, from hearing about your background and then being interested in tech, and like you're getting a second degree in neurology and medicine, and
we're reading all the time.
Oh my gosh,
it's a cool field. Yeah,
incredible. This is fantastic. I want to thank you. I think I could talk to you for a whole nother hour just on this topic. I realize maybe we could have had 2 separate episodes.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to do that.
And I might, we may have you back for sure to keep us all updated on the tech and AI front. It's funny because I actually had an interview with the Wall Street Journal the other day, and we were talking about tech. And one of the things that I was sharing is that here in the state of Washington, they're doing a lot of investing in tech support, because as we all know, the longer we can keep people at home, the less money it's going to cost the state, by moving to higher levels of care. And so how can technology step in, whether it's just simple things like voice automation for opening doors or turning off or on appliances or things like that, or even or things like pill dispensing, or but it's incredible what the technology is presenting to us. What I love so much about you, just talking to you, is your excitement, your enthusiasm, the curiosity, the potential of the future. And this is all rooted in your own personal experience of recognizing the pain that so many people have gone through, and that there are solutions. So
thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention the coolest thing. Thanks for mentioning. If you don't mind, I'll sneak this in. But we just launched another product we were working on for the last 3 months, which is the world's first ever, at least under my knowledge, a voice AI companion for older adults that can be operationalized fully through phone call. So I can share with you a link, but we call it Quick Talk, after just like TikTok, but it's like Quick Talk. But basically it's a people can call it or it can call them. So for older adults experiencing loneliness or isolation who may not even get a caregiver, we've been able to fully create an AI voice that is very human-like sounding, full conversational ability with you. And I've had a bunch of people in like area agencies on aging. When I was at the ARP conference, I was having a lot of people from the DC agency on aging office try it. And like, they were just shocked. Like one of them had come back from safari in Tanzania. So she was like testing it and she was like, oh, Frank was the name of the bot. And we were like, oh yeah, Frank was asking, yeah, so what have you done recently? And she was like, I just got back from Tanzania. And literally Frank was asking, okay, so did you go on safari? And she was like, oh my God. And then so she said, yeah, I did, blah, blah. And then Frank's next question was, did you see the big 5? Which I didn't even know what that is.
Nobody would know what that is.
Category of 5 animals that you're supposed to see on safari. And she was like, what? So it's like, so the kind of the idea of a companion chat AI, I can't believe this product isn't in the market. And it's like not that expensive to launch. Like we're able to get the cost down to less than $1 a call in terms of how much it costs us. But we've had so many people beta test it, and it's like awesome. So we're gonna be launching that in the next few weeks, but I can share with you a link on that too.
Oh,
But yeah, there's
please.
just like so much social impact stuff you can do by like
Oh,
basically democratizing access to AI and like solving problems, for people that, maybe like lonely and don't have people to talk to.
and that is
Um,
not a small problem. I mean,
mhm.
I've done so many episodes on
Yeah,
the studies and research out there about longevity and
yeah,
connection. And I mean, that's just wow. Oh
yeah,
gosh, Neal,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is a fantastic, all of this is fantastic information. I want to
Thanks.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
You and I will be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
And
Yeah, thanks, Laura.
I
Really
will
appreciate it.
share the links with our listeners for sure. And is there any
Cool.
last thing that I can share? Like maybe is there a good place to find you and just kind of follow what you're doing or
Yes, our site is www.careYaya.org. And then you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. We use that a bunch for communications, and it's just Neal, Neal, and then middle initial K, and then last name Shah. But yeah, would be happy to chat, and I'll give you links of our site and then some of these other AI tools if people want to sign up for them. But yeah, we're rolling out a lot of cool stuff, and it's all social impact. It's all grant funded, and it's typically all free. So would love to help people.
awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Neal. Thanks for coming.
cool, cool. Thanks for having me, Laura. Really appreciate it.
All
All
right.
right, have a great day.